Good evening, everyone. I call the October 29th, 2025 public information meeting to order at 7 p.m. Start with roll call. Councillor Goida, Councillor Spoulos,
Present.
Councillor Bailey,
Present.
Councillor Hurst.
Present.
Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Conflict of interest? All right, seeing none. All right. Purpose of this public meeting is to inform and provide the public with the opportunity to ask questions or to express views with respect to a site alteration proposal. Councilors are here to observe and listen to your comments. However, they will not make any decisions this evening. Township requests that you please notify by email building@puslinch.ca or by phone at 519-763-1226 extension 1 if you wish to be on record and would like to be notified of future decisions regarding this application. Please note the meeting is video and audio recorded and all electronic meetings are uploaded to the municipality's YouTube page. By attending this meeting in person or by registering to participate in the meeting by electronic means, you are consenting to have your likeness and comments recorded and posted on YouTube. The format of this public meeting is as follows. The applicant or agent will present the purpose and details of the application and any further relevant information. Township staff will then provide a brief overview of their report. Following this, the public can obtain clarification, ask questions, and express their views on the proposal. Members of the public are permitted 10 minutes each to ask questions and express their views. This time limit is imposed to provide each member of the public an opportunity to speak. Council will then have an opportunity to ask clarification questions. The applicant and the township's consultants will attempt to answer questions or respond to concerns this evening. This is not possible. The applicant and or staff will follow up in obtaining this information. Responses will be provided when this matter is brought forward and evaluated by council at a later date. This public meeting involves an application for a major site alteration for 7504 McLean Road East, Township of Puslinch, County of Wellington. Purpose of this site alteration is to permit approximately 24,000 cubic meters of imported fill that will be used for the redevelopment of the vacant site into a proposed transportation depot. I'll now turn it over to Thomas for his presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor, councilors, and staff. I've never done this before, so if I seem a little nervous, I apologize. So I'm Thomas Demers. I work for a company called A&A Environmental Consultants. We're based at Woodstock, and I represent the current owner, which his name is HBC Real Estate One Inc., who is the current owner. I also represent BVD Petroleum, who is the mortgage holder for the property for HBC Real Estate One. And through the Mortgage Appropriation Act, we'll take over that mortgage at a later time once all this is all kind of squared away. As of now. So that's kind of the first slide. I just want to kind of get to the site. If you can go to the next slide. So the subject site, as you see here, is just north of the Brock Road, Highway 6 South 401 interchange, just off McLean Road. Pretty much the end of the cul-de-sac there. We go to the next slide. So I'm gonna get your basis to the site. Unfortunately, there wasn't a very great air photo, but that kind of gives us a surrounding, mostly industrial in the area. It's right next to the Memoet site, and currently it is a vacant property. Even though on the air photo looks like it is currently vacant. So we go to the next slide. I will kind of give you so in 2002. An unknown amount of soil was of unknown quality and source was imported to the site. This is way before my time. So a major site alteration permit is required, but was not obtained by these owners. A cease and desist was issued in order to obtain a site alteration permit. Site alteration is now required retroactively after the site alteration and soil importation is complete. So right now, all the soil is already on site. This was done before, and the previous owners were in violation of your site alteration bylaw. So I'll kind of give you a more detailed timeline if we go to the next slide. So October 2022, cease and desist was issued for the site alteration without a permit to the owners of HBC Real Estate One Inc. And they were ordered to get this permit. 2 years later, in March of 2024, after there was an alteration to the site alteration bylaw in Puslinch, the site was re-inspected and a final cease and desist was issued. And then this is when the new soon-to-be owner, BVD Petroleum, was brought in to handle the mortgage of this and then to eventually take it over and to sell it once everything is all said and done with all these bylaw infractions. So we were brought on in the summer, August to September 2025. Were retained environmental consultants retained as QPs by BVD Petroleum to represent the HBC Real Estate One. And this kind of started this whole process. So the first step in this process was determining how much soil was brought to site to begin with, because that was unknown. We didn't know the source. We didn't know any quality at the time. While we knew that it was miscolored and that there was a cease and desist order enforced. So we were able to get a previous survey of the site before the site alteration was done. And then we were able to obtain a topographic survey of it after all the site alteration was done. So using these topographic elevations throughout the site over between before and after, we're able to do what is called a cut fill analysis to determine the volume of change over time over the elevations. And from there, we have come to the conclusion it was approximately 24,000 cubic meters, and it was accepted by the Township of Puslinch when we went through this process. So once we determined that amount of soil, we can go to the next slide, please. We created a sampling and analysis plan that was followed by Ontario Regulation 406 for SS soil. And from there, we made this plan of selecting 88 locations across the site, pretty much in a grid pattern, evenly spaced across the site, to advance boreholes down to a 10-foot depth, which was the maximum depth we found to be this soil was brought in. And from there, of these 88 boreholes, 4 samples were taken at 2.5 foot increments in depth. So from these 4 samples, we did a preliminary vapor analysis on these soil samples. And from those, it gives us a VOC parts per million reading. And from this reading, we highlighted whatever soil was had the highest ppm reading as selected as our soil for that borehole. So we submitted 88 samples plus 9 duplicate samples to verify our QA/QC, as well as submitting 12 samples for leachate testing to see if any soil would, when you mix it with water and rotate over time, whether there's any contaminants that would leach out from the soil into the water. This test was completed then. So that was our scope of work. We created and submitted to the Township of Puslinch, and it was approved to move forward with that. Well, the next slide. From our analysis and borehole work, we have determined there was 18 boreholes with exceedances across various parts of the site. In our map, you can see the red ones are bad and the green ones are good. So from there, we wanted to see what our client wanted to do, because there are kind of 2 options: whether we remove the soil that is contaminated to a designated waste recycler or something that can handle that kind of contaminated soil, or we would do something called a due diligence risk assessment, where we were able to try and keep the soil on site, but limiting the risk to health and human people around, whether it's the environment or to people that are occupying the site or surrounding the site. So if we go to the next slide. So this was now March 20 of 2025, and I think apologize. Sorry. So March 2025 is a risk assessment was ordered and then completed, which is done to mitigate the risk of the soil contamination impact on site, which the main factors were lead and zinc. And from this risk assessment, we had our risk assessor, who is a part of our company, but is technically a solo contractor that we hire him for these specific risk assessment jobs. And from these, he created a risk management measure for the site, which for the soil was capping the soil with a 0.5 meter thick layer of gravel or soil that meet Table 1 site condition standards. And I know there's a lot of questions about groundwater, and we'll get to that point there. It's kind of come at me at this point. The groundwater was an issue, and we'll get to that there. So I just want to continue with the timeline. So April 2025, December 25, September 2025 has been the permit application process with submission and comments. and another submission, and we received comments back from our second submission, which has kind of brought us here now. Another thing we've had to work together with the property owners and their consultants is they're currently going through with the site plan application, which is being completed concurrently with the site alteration permit. And then these two permits have now been pretty much linked, that one needs to get approved, one as does the other at the same time, because most of them have similar obviously characteristics, but similar reports that be done, whether it's stormwater management or those kind of things for site application, as well as other aspects for the like flood zone and those kind of aspects for the site alteration permit. A lot of them are linked, so when we brought them together, we kind of use the same ones, the same reports from different consultants. So now that they're linked, the site alteration permit required is pretty much satisfied up until this stage of the process, which is the town meeting and comments of that nature. And if we go to the next slide, it kind of gives us just a quick site plan of what this whole plan of the site is supposed to look. The orange is just the one building, most of the parking lot, most of the property is going to be parking lot. For trucks, the building will be offices, some warehouse storage, and there'll be a small truck repair area. And then as we move to the next slide, there will be no further activities related to the site alteration permit. It's our goal. We want to keep the soil on the site. Just that way we don't have to deal with this process again, but also get rid of and have our client who's already paid a bunch of money to do this process here. Eventually, obviously, we'll pay out for him, but he doesn't want to spend any more money on the soil, hopefully. So right now there'll be no additional hauling or importing of soil on the site, and future works on the site will be completed in association with the site plan application and those associated permits. And as you know, that's kind of the end of that. I know groundwater was a big issue when I got some questions back from the presentation and the comments. So I just want to kind of get ahead of this, and then we can ask questions obviously afterwards. Where is that page? Okay, so the groundwater was an exceedance for cobalt, and these groundwater wells are in the shallow aquifer, which is the top, I'd say 10 feet, 10 to 15 feet, depends on the well. I don't know the exact depths to, I think it's 20 feet. This was sampled in 2024 for most, we call it a water quality analysis, a basic package that kind of analysis all major things. Cobalt came back as a level of 4.97 micrograms per liter, which is above the 0.4 micrograms per liter for health and aquatic life that has to be taken care of. It has to do with mostly drinking water that it has to be associated with. But this is only in the shallow aquifer. The risk assessor put a recommendation that no potable water was to be installed on site. Now, after looking back at that, there's a variety of ways we can handle this, since it's kind of come up very abruptly. If there was an installation of a deep water well into the deep aquifer, I'm fairly certain that there would be no issue for the drinking water quality. Any well that would be installed on site would be vigorously tested against the Ontario Drinking Water Standards. Any exceedances that would come out, we would then source either a filtration, whether it's reverse osmosis or whether it's to get rid of any issues that would stem from that. So this level of 4.97 micrograms per liter is exceedance for the drinking water aspect of 0.4 micrograms per liter. But it's way less than table 2 environmental contamination, which is OREG 153. That level is 66 micrograms per liter, which is very much low. The source of this cobalt, we believe fairly certain that it's not the soil that was brought into site. Using our leachate analysis, the results of that indicated that all levels of, so the 12 leachate samples that were submitted, the levels of cobalt analyzed in leachate were non-detectable. So the lab can only analyze up to a certain point, and then anything that is less than a number is most likely just, it's how low their gear can analyze. And that level was 0.3 micrograms per liter, which is less than 0.4. So if we had to verify the groundwater quality, I would recommend doing a additional groundwater sampling of the shallow aquifer. And from that point, we can see what the levels are and we can kind of move forward from there. At that point, the groundwater seems to be okay. It was sampled as part of the hydrogeological investigation, which is also being completed for the site plan application by our office. Through that analysis, the level of cobalt was below the standard for Ontario drinking water level. So at this point, I would recommend doing a resample and kind of be our starting point when we deal with the groundwater. But I'm fairly certain, as is my boss, Dr. Ali Rasul, who is the stamped qualified person. Me and him are working together on this out of our office, and he shares my idea of this being not a huge plume that is advancing from some sort of environmental contamination spill or anything like that. We believe it could be possibly naturally occurring. But we can't really verify a source, whether it's leaving the site or it's entering the site. We can't guarantee that either, just because the site alteration permit was just focused on the site itself, a little bit outside of our scope. And just because we were focused on the soil, the groundwater was not necessarily an afterthought, but it was built into the risk assessment, and it didn't really prime until it was brought to us during our first submission for the site alteration permit. It was not a comment when it came to either our soil investigation and characterization report, or in regards to our due diligence risk assessment. There was no comments regarding the groundwater or our measures put in place. So that is pretty much where we're at there. Sorry, I know it's a lot of information. I had to write it.
So you did a fantastic job, Thomas. I appreciate that. Sounds like it was a very thorough review of the site, and you were very upfront, I felt, in your presentation. Didn't sense any sort of not deviation, but you were very forthcoming, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, is there any public people attending online? Okay. There's nobody behind you. Now let's open up to council. Mr. Smith.
Yes, I really am concerned about the cobalt in the groundwater.
That's what I was.
And
Yep.
and the taking the groundwater and filtering down through other wells or other factors in the soil into the lower groundwater table.
That there. I agree, it should be looked at. I think the first thing we do would be conduct groundwater sampling, like I mentioned before, against cobalt, but I would do it for the water quality analysis package that does various heavy metals as well as things. If we do that again on site, we could then verify, because this is just this 4.97 micrograms per liter cobalt is one sample that was completed almost 2.5 years ago now. So I'd like to verify that before we kind of get ahead of ourselves. As for the deep water, most of the wells, as we've shown, I don't know if you guys will have that.
Yeah, there is a table.
There was a table.
Yeah, there is a table.
This one here, you
Yeah.
see your reports, it has a list of all the groundwater wells within the surrounding area. Majority of them are deep water wells. I don't believe there would be any impact on those wells just by distance covered and by the level of cobalt. But I feel like a verification sample would be a good place to start, and from there we can discuss with our client and bring forward another option, whether based upon the results you were saying.
Another question, you mentioned that you don't think it came from your soil, it was
Yes.
deposited. But you've done all the analysis and you pointed out to 18 points of hotspots.
Yes,
And in those hotspots, didn't they have the cobalt as being accessible?
those hotspots, I don't know exact levels here, which is certainly. It was lead and zinc in the water or in the soil, and those aren't gonna migrate from the soil into the groundwater due to leachate. We did the leachate test according to OREG 406. And from those results, the levels were all below 0.3 micrograms.
Where was the cobalt discovered?
What's that?
Where was the cobalt discovered?
There was one well, it's either in the left corner, or it's in the top left, right corner, or the right corner. There's 4 wells on site. And I unfortunately, I just can't remember which one it is here, kind of caught me by surprise, but it's from one well highlighted on the site. And it could be from another source that I can't verify there. It could be a error in the lab analysis as well. And I want to do a verification sample of all wells on site to make sure that we obviously deal with this.
You mentioned the prohibition of taking potable water. Would that extend to taking the water from the deeper aquifers?
I don't believe so. I think this is just from shallow aquifer. I would like to open this back up to the risk assessor to have his take on the deep water aquifer, since it's kind of come up in more abruptly than I would have imagined. I don't believe it would migrate that far, and I just don't know where the source is, whether this is from our site or not. I can't confirm that unless a further investigation, but I don't believe it would impact that at all, especially from our soil, from the leachate.
The Scopy report concludes that the fill material is the likely source of exceedances.
Yeah, in the soil exceedances.
Yeah.
I do have read that in for the lead and zinc. The cobalt, that level 4.97 was taken from additional waters, that one water sample that he reviewed. So he took that one water sample as the issue there, and I realize now that it's more of an impact than we realized.
So what the questions are.
Mr. Bailey?
Yeah, so coming out of your questions, there's going to be like a groundwater assessment then?
Yes, we'll do more water samples. It's becoming more of an issue. I'm gonna talk to the client tomorrow and give us or bring us straight away. Then we get it dealt with, the additional water sample.
And then I guess looking forward, if there's exceedances, what is the process?
If there's exceedances in the groundwater, then we have to then talk to our risk assessor, talk to the client and see what we have to come up with a plan to handle this cobalt in the groundwater is what will be the effect. We thought it was handled with the risk management measures put in place. Obviously, the water, sorry, the groundwater of 4.97 is above the drinking water level, but I don't believe it's above any of the environmental contamination for OREG 153. As is for the 0.4 for drinking water is where we're gonna find our issue, and that's what we're gonna test it for that level.
Okay, and when you're talking about drinking water, are you talking about it specifically for this
So
lot? Because my concern is the
Yes.
drinking water of the.
I agree, for sure. No,
Right, so-
no, yeah. It's just in the shallow. The majority of these wells are, I'd say, most drinking water wells, the commercial, domestic. The only wells that are shallow aquifer are monitoring wells that we have installed, plus a few other ones that are off-site. Most of them in the deep aquifer, and I would not consider this be an impact to the drinking water quality for those other wells outside the site. We can verify with testing of their wells if there's any concern for that. I don't be no problem to test for that. I don't foresee that being the cause of or having other people's water quality impacted from this one level of 4.97.
Right, and the only way to know though is to do testing up there.
Is to do testing from our site to then verify the sample in that location. And if those come back as, we would write that off. If they come back as within the guideline value, we would write that off as laboratory analysis. We could do a double verification. So we could sample it now, we could sample it for 3 months going forward for the next year to verify that that level is not, it's not a lab screw up, or whether it is. That way we would verify that over time.
And vice versa, if it does come back high, then you would,
Then we would deal with it.
and
Absolutely.
then.
Then we have
Test, you know, further as the counselors kind of.
For sure. That level there is very low when I've seen cobalt and a high excessive in other sites that I've dealt with. But yeah, no, I more or less, we will do this level will be taken care of. We're not gonna overlook the groundwater. I know members of the council and Mr. Mayor, you obviously brought that to light, and we will definitely be looking into that for sure.
So is that captured somewhere that we, I'm hearing the delegate say that that's what they're gonna do, but how do we ensure that that's gonna happen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so staff will provide comments to the proponent following the meeting of what the next requirements are for another submission, and then we'll continue through our application process. And as this is a major application, it will come to council for approval, so we'll have responses to those questions when that recommendation report comes forward.
Okay, thank you. I have just a couple comments. One is, I know when I've asked staff that, the responses, have we had any feedback from the public? The answer is no. I don't think a lot of the public know that this has happened. I know there's 120-meter, mail out or something that happened, but nobody lives within that space.
For sure, yeah.
So I don't have a lot of comfort in hearing there's no feedback from the community and therefore they're okay with everything that's happening when we don't actually know that they know to give the feedback. So that's just a comment. I don't know how we deal with that more. I don't know how, you can't be pushing it on social media or anything like that, but that's just a comment. I know the Aberfoyle Mills, I don't know how far they are from this lot as the bird flies, but I don't know, were they notified at all
Gilmore Road.
on Gilmore Road?
Through your chair, we would have notified the 120-meter buffer from the property in accordance with the bylaw.
And is that driving on the road, like 120 or?
Probably as a
Mr.
bird
Chair, is
flies.
Yeah, but as the, okay, yeah. Anyway, just a comment about why the fact there's no, engagement here today. And then this is not really regarding, the deal of it, it's more when this fill all came in, we didn't have our haul route permit at the time, is that correct?
That would be correct, yes.
So there's no way to recoup any costs associated with road deterioration or anything with all those trucks that went in?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we wouldn't have had an inspection before and after, so we can't be sure that any impact to the road was through the hauling.
And now that property owner is that correct?
Yeah, they're still technically owners of the site, while they can't transfer the ownership until these bylaw things are solved. So the mortgage holder, who is technically our client, BVD Petroleum, is responsible for all this, who's paying for all these things to get completed. But the owner, once this is all taken care of, they will be taken over from this HBC one. HBC one Realty has no involvement. I don't talk to them or anything. It's all I deal directly with Petroleum. Sorry.
It's just disappointing that all those trucks were going in, wear and tear on our roads, and we had no.
Yes, I know, because you have that big development that was constructed just recently, so they tore up the road just as well too.
But, I understand your concern. I would have more concerns if it were rural property. This is in the heart of our industrial. The roads are designed for that. We have Mamoot there. So there's already heavy travel. At least
A lot of trucks that came
I
in
agree.
that were not calculated for when we were.
But at least the infrastructure is designed for it, whereas, we have these rural properties that the road is not designed for it. So I would suggest that the impact would be marginal compared to if it were on a 20th side road or something, you know what I mean? Because it is designed for it, but yes, you're not wrong. It's a lot of trucks.
How many trucks? Yeah.
20, usually a truck can hold 20 cubic meters, so divide that by 24,000, a couple thousand trucks probably that eventually went through there. Over, the time, like this is definitely before me, I was brought in, so I can't confirm anything, but that's just more of a guess.
My last question was, you talked about capping eventually.
Yep.
What is the purpose of capping?
So.
And why would it not be pavement?
Oh, so like, this is just one layer of it, so like the mitigate the risk of the soil impact, just the soil. Because of lead and zinc, it would be capped with a gravel soil that is meeting table 1 site condition standards. That would be just the base layer, and then everything else would be developed on top. They wouldn't just be gravel the whole site, it'd be gravel, and then probably a sand of some kind, and then your granular B, your granular A, and then your asphalt. It's all gonna be covered.
Yeah, maybe a couple comments. So, one, this.
So sorry.
Oh, good. Yeah, I like that. It's flashing and everything.
How do you never answer your messages when your phone does that?
I never have it on. It's my kids, it's okay.
So maybe just like 4 quick points here. So I appreciate your demeanor. Indeed, this is a crummy situation.
Yeah.
Like around, right? And realizing, very clearly that you and from an engineering standpoint are coming in very much after
Yes,
all this deviant action.
trying to, yeah, it's been
Trying to come to
for
a
sure.
solution, so I very much appreciate what you're trying to do, like 100%. So I think, I just wanted to state that, because I think
appreciate
it's,
that.
and your demeanor's been very, forthcoming, as the mayor said. Maybe like a couple questions.
Yep.
So I'm very much in support of the discussion around, additional sampling. I
Yep.
think that's something I would totally get behind. And, yeah, I think in the briefings, the number of adjacent sampling wells, like I think that would be a really good starting point there.
Lucky enough, on our site, a lot of the wells are placed near the perimeter of the site, so it would capture a lot of the water quality on the site for the shallow aquifer.
So I think that's a good action coming out. One other one, and maybe I didn't see it, and I apologize, because it's like 1,400 bloody pages through this.
I know.
Floodplain management.
Yes.
Right, so if I look at that property to the, I'll say this northeast, kind of find it.
Yep.
And what I didn't see is in like water flow mapping, and if I missed that, my apologies, but I'm just picturing moving forward, significant rain events, water percolation, all that type of stuff. Where's the water flowing to? One of my questions. And maybe.
We have completed it, I completed it, and in our hydrogeological investigation, we do a groundwater contour map. And the groundwater flow, I believe, I have to double check the report, so if I say this and it's wrong, I believe it is to the south to southwest direction. So on that site there,
Across
I'm
the,
just gonna show you easier directions. This direction here is where most of it is. There's a lot of higher ground in this area here. Most of it's gonna flow this way. Sometimes ground level doesn't always show which way groundwater is gonna flow into the ground, but most of it, I have to verify with the report, but I'm very certain it's to the south.
It is, that's what I recall.
and my apologies,
No worries, yeah, I'm sorry, the two reports, the hydrogeological investigation as well as the site alteration permit are kind of, they're separate, but they're connected, and I'm just, my head between the two is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I think that the last one is just the topping, and maybe this is more into the site planning after this gets rectified. So if I'm, Mr. Mayor, if I'm jumping ahead too far, just tell me to park it type of thing. Yeah, I'm just curious, so my understanding would be, so we work through this process, we get some sign off that the current soil in there is, we're okay with it,
Yep.
for lack of a more
Mhm.
sophisticated way of saying that. Then the plan is to put a half a meter of gravel.
Of a gravel, probably, it doesn't have to be gravel, it just has to meet table 1 SCS, so it's the highest standard for site conditions.
And then thereafter would be asphalt on top.
Yeah, after that, it'd be, you'd have your cap layer, and then that would be their starting point for construction and development on the site. So you have your cap layer, and then whether it's a sand or additional gravel layer, like it wouldn't be the final layer, there'd be quite a bit of distance above that, probably just depending on your site grading plan by the engineers.
And then presumably thereafter, there would be a water management strategy for that asphalt to go into.
Oh, yeah, it's all built into the stormwater management. I think it's a part of the package. I know it's
Yeah.
1,400 pages, but yeah, it's a part of that.
Yeah, and maybe just like a question for other Thomas, is that a very common process that you've seen in other circumstances like this from a soil management standpoint?
Capping on the impacted soil, yeah, it's one of the options, risk management options. I mean, depending on the impact, but in this case, the metals, the human health issues driven by direct contacts, as long as you have a separation between the contaminated soil and the receptor. That's the one of the approaches, yeah.
I think I'm good. I think the big piece for me is the water sample.
For sure, yeah, it seems like a big piece when I read through the questions that were I reviewed before, so for sure, taking care of it.
With discussion on the groundwater sampling, will you be going off the property to sample?
If we, after the initial sampling on site, if the levels from the cobalts are way above any exceedance level, then we would then approach that problem to then find the next layer around to see if there is additional, or we would probably submit that back to the township here, and we would kind of work out a plan the best way to move forward with this groundwater situation.
Councilor Hurst, you made reference to wells. Are you talking about the wells on the other properties?
That's where my head was going, is adjacent wells. There's, down there's gonna be tons of sampling wells, I would think. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as we would have permission to sample those wells that are around, more or less just finding them in the surrounding areas. Or if we can give permission to install more wells, that if we feel we need to, we can always approach that way as well.
And the question of staff will be running through our hydrogeologist.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, any hydrogeological investigations we will provide to our hydrogeologist for review and comment.
HBC Realty was always the owner of the property,
As far as I know,
and they were the importer of the material.
yes, as far as.
And they've never disclosed where the material came from. Not to us, but to.
No, to full disclosure for me, I was never privy to that information. I don't believe anybody really knows. I feel like it was just like, oh, we can accept soil and here it is, and they just said, bring it here.
This is exactly why we built a site alteration bylaw for any of the public.
For sure, I think it's great. It's good. I think it's definitely a good thing, for sure.
Yeah, thank you. It's Christine and staff and so, 0.5 of a meter cap, table one.
Mhm.
One, I'm no expert on anything,
Sure.
but, you know, when I hear table one, we deal a lot with aggregate and rehab.
Mhm.
And that means topsoil and my limited understanding is you don't build parking lots on top of
No,
topsoil. So where I'm
no.
going with this is that the slide deck says we're not importing any more fill, but actually you're gonna bring in 0.5 meter across the whole site.
So,
So hold on.
fair point, no, that's fair, that's a fair
So-
point, you're right, sorry.
So staff, I feel that that should be calculated for the fee unless it already has. Is it inclusive of the 24,000 that's been reported to the site?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the site alteration bylaw has exemptions related to site plan control.
Okay.
So the remainder of the bill would likely be imported, if I'm understanding correctly, would be imported through the site plan control application.
Yes.
So, as noted in our staff report, there would be a condition to monitor the quality of any future imported fill through the site plan application, but this is legalized what's been done on property today.
I don't like that. I think that, anyway, staff can take it away. You might get lucky. We'll see.
That's
It's not
fair.
you, it's not your money.
No, it's 100%.
To me, that's still another, would 0.5 meter across that whole site still qualify for a minor, major site alteration permit? Seems like a lot.
So through you, Mr. Chair, and we can discuss this with the proponent, so it could be included into this, current major amendment, because if it was to be done through further implementation on another site alteration, application, it would be through a major because of the amount that have been brought in the 5-year period before. So it could be looked at through this existing permit, and then, council would have that for consideration with their application report.
I do appreciate the cooperation from, sounds like, the mortgage company.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work for BVD Petroleum through different jobs across Ontario. So we've worked really closely with them, and he was pretty much, it almost seems like the mortgage holder is doing this almost as a favor to these other people to more or less take care of it for him. I don't know any of the
Well,
details inside there, but
Let's
yeah.
be honest, he's the mortgage holder, so if he walks away, he's still left hand holding the bag, so.
Yep.
It's an industrial lot in proximity to the 401, so there's interest to have it as a truck depot. The last one, and no disrespect intended, however, we experience everything in this township of this small little place we are. You stated your third-party risk assessor is an employee but arm's length. My question, I guess, would be to staff, do we peer review the risk assessor's report? Or do we accept it as carte blanche now? I'm only questioning, it's tough, because I'm questioning, you know, he works for you, even though at arm's length. You know, his interests are likely for your client, or you are the client, or the owner, and I'm just, do we have a third party risk, and if it's in there, I apologize.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so any of the documentation that's provided by the applicant is peer reviewed by our expert consultant, so whether that's our hydrogeologist or our environmental engineer.
So is Thomas the risk assessor kind of
So-
critique?
I am not a risk assessor, but I read many of them. Given the issues here about the soil and groundwater. I don't have a problem with this proposal. Actually, I find it surprising that we're proposing table one soil to put on the asphalt. Seems like a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of tracks on the road. If the site's gonna be capped with asphalt, why not just put the geotech base, granule base, and I mean, kind of can speak to geotech, but and pave it. You save yourself a lot of space, a lot of, I mean, elevation wise and everything else.
Thomas, I was trying to get more money out of him,
You are getting, well,
and you just kiboshed that pretty quick.
it's gonna be a lot of effort to cap it and then to bear it under asphalt. It's kind of surprising. I mean, great if you can get it, but I think it's not the best use of resources and best interest to everybody. Basically, traffic, there'll be, you know, endure to truck traffic to bring the soil in and all the other disturbance, but
I don't disagree with you, Thomas. I still worry even with the importation of more fill.
yeah.
Even though it's the mortgage company, we've had it so much here, we can never guarantee the quality of that.
For sure, I understand, especially in this area with many back roads.
I had the same question about naturally occurring, but it was then clarified, it was well. Well, I think, so, so, it's just.
To review, one question for the risk assessor to go back was if he's considered the site plan application, which does show it's entirely asphalt, so. Risk assessor may have not known the full intention of the site at the
I think
time.
that at that time, that is correct, when we did this risk assessment.
Hence the half meter, he didn't know it was gonna be capped
He
with
didn't
asphalt.
maybe know what was planned for the site, so it may be worth going back to coordinate efforts.
And that site's already at elevation to the road, now you're gonna be up half a meter plus, so.
Definitely something to look into for sure, I agree.
Thomas just made his.
Good kickbacks. Almost. Kidding.
I know you're kidding. Alright.
To be compacted, like, is what's there need to be compacted?
They would probably go through the compactor to make sure that it is, and then they would put on top, and usually compaction is done in 1 foot lifts of material all the way as they go up.
It's also been sitting there for 2 years.
Yeah, so yeah, it's over time, would definitely come back with rain and moisture inches.
What's naturally, like, where does cobalt come from, naturally?
It's just, it's a naturally occurring element, and it's found in some water systems in Ontario. That is then usually either it's filtered out or they handle it in a different way. It's mostly just a naturally occurring, and it can be a byproduct of few heavy industry. But that's why it's kind of a weird, I don't really know what the source would be. Natural seems thing, it also seems like it could be lab error. With laboratory analysis, when they test for metals, because I've done this before, you pour the water into this bottle that has a preservative in it. This preservative sometimes can increase the percolation, or not percolation, precipitation of particles from the water out into a whole thing. So that would kind of skew the test if the test was done incorrectly, or if the sampling of the water into the bottle was not done perfectly. If it has to be filtered to bring out all those particles, because if you add that with the preservative that's in there, it can increase the precipitation of it out. So that could be a possibility that we'll look into there. But most of the time, when I've encountered cobalt, it is mostly from naturally occurring, unless you're like in a heavy industry downtown Hamilton, the old downtown Hamilton, or they have big heavy industry. Sometimes there's places in Brampton that have lots of big industry in that way. It's kind of the only place I've seen it.
But if the soil came from Brampton,
Yeah,
then that might explain it.
oh, yeah, yeah, 100%.
I don't believe the source of the cobalt is our soil, just from the leachate analysis. Because if there was cobalt in the soil that would leachate into the from our leachate analysis, it would have come up on that. Because we did that many, we did 12 samples across the site for leachate analysis.
Any further? Okay. There's nobody online still, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I declare this public meeting closed. Council will take no action on the proposal tonight. Staff will be reporting at a later date with a recommendation for council's consideration. If you wish to receive further notification of this proposal, please email or call building@whistlish.ca or by phone 519-763-1226, extension 1. Or contact township staff during regular business hours. Only those persons who leave their names will be provided further notification. Wish to speak to the proposal when it's brought before council in the future, you must register as a delegation with the municipal clerk prior to the meeting. Very much.